Hello? Oh, that's one way to do it. Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I won a race. This is the Greenbelt training race. I raced in the B field, which is the Cat 4s, and I'll be sharing some of my thoughts with you about the race today. I definitely enjoyed the race. I enjoyed the win, obviously. I'm not really thumping my chest because I know it's a Cat 4 race, but winning definitely feels better than not winning. By the time I post this video up for you guys to watch, it is going to be my birthday, May 31st. I turned 40 today. I definitely don't feel 40, I feel much younger. A lot of people say I look much younger. But yeah, I've never been big on my birthday. It's really just another day. But the thing that I love about my birthday is that my family, my wife and my 4 kids, who are 7, 5, 3, and 1-year-old, are excited for me. And we get to spend time together. My kids are very excited to pick up my cake and eat it. And the other thing about special days like birthdays or other events is that they give me a bit of time to reflect on my life and just how thankful and blessed I feel. So I definitely thank God a lot for everything that He's given to me. And definitely as I get older, I am very thankful for good health. As far as this race goes, the official mentioned in the pre-race speech that this is the longest running training race in the country. So that's pretty cool. And when he asked if anyone was new to this race, I think I was the only one to raise my hand. So it seems like everybody who is here today has at least raced it one time before. But I definitely do my research. I always look up YouTube videos so that I can see what the course is like, and I can also see how other people have raced it in the past. And I also reach out to others that I know who have done the race before, and I get their thoughts and opinions on the race and the course as well. In making all of my videos, I also hope that it can be informational and helpful to people in the future who race these races. So let's go. This is at Greenbelt Park in Greenbelt, Maryland. It's closed off to car traffic, but the centerline rule is still in effect. There's one pretty fast right-hand turn, and you can cross the center line leading into the turn. And then the only other time that you can cross the center line is within about 200 meters of the finish. The start-finish line is on the upper right-hand corner of the course map, and the first half of each lap is generally downhill. And then after you make the right-hand turn, it's pretty flat, and then the last 700 to 800 meters of the course, coming back to the finish line, is a steady incline. So generally speaking, compared to the last race that I did, which was Dolan circuit race, the course profile is very similar. And for me, the longer dragging uphill finishes are better suited for my strengths. I think one of the most fun parts about racing is seeing that every little decision you make has a particular outcome. And the more experience I get with racing, I'm really hoping that it'll be more natural for me to make good sound decisions. When I watched the video back from the Dolan circuit race, it was so painful to see how many bad decisions I made. And you can definitely see it in the power numbers and the data. I say data. So I'll put up the side-by-side data for the Dolan circuit race and the Greenbelt race today. And it's pretty plain to see just how different the numbers are. The time durations were essentially the same. The normalized power at Dolan was 311 compared to 266 at Greenbelt. The average power at Dolan was 249 compared to 224 here. And then look at the heart rate data. My average heart rate was 189 at Dolan and 172 at Greenbelt. So that's a huge difference. And then the max heart rate numbers were really different too. 205 at Dolan, 193 at Greenbelt. And one of the things that you can calculate with your normalized power number and your average power number is what we call Variability Index. If you take the normalized power, so for instance for Dolan 311, divided by the average power, which is 249, the Variability Index comes out to somewhere around 1.25, which is pretty high. And this little chart here is just to give you a general sense of the variability indexes. For Greenbelt, if you take 266 divided by 224, the variability index comes out to somewhere around 1.18 to 1.19. And that number is much more within the range of what you would expect for a typical road race. And lastly, seeing that there's more elevation gain at Greenbelt compared to Dolan, you might expect that variability index to be higher for Greenbelt, but it was actually the opposite. I had a lower variability index at Greenbelt, which probably means that I rode much smoother, rode in the draft a lot more, conserved more energy, and didn't surge nearly as much as I did at Dolan. Oh, and lastly, on the final sprint at Dolan, I was barely able to crack 900 watts, and at the time that really felt like death. But at Greenbelt, because I was much more fresh, I was able to sprint over 1,000 watts relatively easily without feeling like I was going to explode at all. So for this Greenbelt race as a whole, I definitely executed well. My main process goals throughout the race were to stay closer to the front of the race, so I wanted to stay in the top 5 to 10 wheels at all times, and I also wanted to stay in the draft as much as possible. I did hear that it's really difficult for a breakaway to stick at Greenbelt, so I wasn't too concerned about any attacks going off the front. But in this race, anytime any type of attack went off the front, it did inject some speed into the peloton. But not only that, there was a super strong rider named Will, who was at this race. He's the one in the black kit with the shiny blue shoes. He came to this race with the mission to control the field. So he was driving a pretty steady pace on the front for probably about half the race. And anytime an attack went off the front, for the most part, he was discouraging the attacks by catching and killing it, or just being more active on the front. Will and I are both solo riders, and we're not attached to any team. We did talk in the past about the potential of racing together and working as a team in a race. We didn't specifically talk about it before this race, but for the most part, I felt like Will was somewhat riding for me this entire race, and I personally have to give him a little bit of credit for my success in this race, mainly because he kept the field together and also did a little bit of a lead out for me at the end. So we're somewhere in the middle laps of the race, and we are coming up to this right-hand turn. I'm probably around 7th or 8th wheel here, and you can see that I have to scrub some speed, and then I have to punch out. And being the only corner on the course, it's a spot on the course where you could actually save quite a lot of energy relative to the rest of the field. Now, this was probably a section of the course where it was easiest to move up if you wanted to, mainly because the field was pretty strung out as the group is coming back together. And you'll see one example of it here where everyone punches it out of the corner, and then eventually everyone coasts. And I either had the choice to scrub some brakes and just stay in the draft behind this NCVC rider, but I wanted to preserve all the energy that I had put out of that turn, so I scoot to the left a little bit, and I get a little lucky because Kyle comes out to the left too, and then I catch his wheel, and then I don't have to pedal that hard to make up a few more wheels here. And just like that, I'm closer to the front. So I double checked, and what you saw there was lap 6. This is lap 7. So we are coming back down to the turn, coming down the hill, staying in the draft. I am 5th wheel this time, so I'm able to carry more speed through the turn. Again, we punch it hard out of the turn, but even something simple like that creates a bit of a gap and strings the field out. Again, we coast, and I don't want to be on the brakes, so I peel off to the left a little bit, and I hop right on Will's wheel. Now, as we're coming back together, this NCVC rider preserves his speed and uses it to attack on the right side, which is smart. We see it go, don't panic, and then we see another rider go. I believe his name is Quinn from Kelly Benefits. And then the Copia rider goes, Will goes, another rider goes, and then I hop on the wheel. I remember during the race I was kind of patting myself on the back for being patient, because normally I'm not patient in a race, and I'm a little bit too quick to respond to attacks and moves that happen. But looking back at this footage and seeing how I didn't really have to spike so hard, for sure this was a good decision. So we're starting to go back uphill, and we've caught the 2 guys that attacked. You'll see I slide over to the right, and I move up a little bit. And remember I said I don't mind being on the front, or close to the front, when we are going uphill. Being a slightly lighter rider and at slower speed, the draft that I'm giving to the people behind me isn't all that great. And either way, being up here, I'm going to try to slot in behind a wheel anyway. So at the beginning of lap 8 on the downhill, we get passed by the A field. We roll around the course once, and this is now the beginning of lap 9, which is the second to last lap. This Route 1 Velo guy attacks on the right side, and do I follow him? Nope. Because the downhill's coming up, I'm lighter, I'm not very aero, and I know I'm going to have to put out at least 250 watts in order to keep some sort of pace on the downhill. This NCVC rider is a bigger rider than I am, so I surf some wheels, and again conserve some energy. Will comes up on the left. I do have to search a little bit to get on his wheel, but the energy that I expend here, I get to save coming out of the turn. Will tucks, I tuck behind him. We take the corner at a good speed, and look at the gap that forms behind us simply because we got to take that corner at our speed. And if you noticed, I barely touched 400 watts coming out of that corner. So I think I am learning that there are strategic times in a race where you can put down some power in order to save a little bit at a different point in the race for an overall net benefit. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, so here the Route 1 Velo guy goes hard again, and I wasn't exactly sure what to do. I did look back and I saw that there was still a gap, so I decided that it would be better to push a little bit of power so that I could get back into Will's draft. And I figured that would force the field to continue to chase and waste some energy. But if you think it would have been better for me to sit up and let the field catch me and then try to slot in there, you can let me know in the comments. In this particular case, it seems like it worked out okay for me to chase the two front guys for a few seconds. Alright, the field's all together and we're coming up to the bell lap. This is lap number 10. Now something does happen here. Will surges a little bit, and I sense that he's doing that, so I wanted to hop right on his wheel so that we could take the downhill together again. But in doing so, I have to assert myself a little bit here, and I deviate from my line so that I can hop on his wheel. The Copia rider was to my left, and he was probably about half a bike length behind me. He does a good job of keeping his elbow wide, and I actually feel it on my left hip. And I think that caused me to deviate a little bit more to the left than I wanted to. But in the moment, it was one of those things where I don't think I did anything illegal. Let me know if I did. But I can understand his frustration of me moving over to the left so that I could take Will's wheel. Either way, Copia rider, sorry about that. If we're strictly talking about tactics and strategy, this was definitely a smart move on my part though, because I've definitely had experiences where I let that wheel go and then a whole stream of 10 to 15 riders basically just comes up on my left side and then I get shuffled back at least 15-20 wheels. And I definitely didn't want that to happen because we only had one lap left. Coming into the race, I was thinking about the finish, and on a narrow lane like this, I definitely wanted to be top 3 wheels at least. And honestly, if I even ended up in the front, I wouldn't have minded so much, because I figured even if I sprint from there, I would probably get top 5 at worst. But anyway, we take this last turn pretty fast again, and we punch it pretty hard out of the turn. And this rider on the front is Hysong. After the race, I think he said he wanted to do some sort of solo move on the last lap, and unintentionally, it turned into a pretty nice lead out for about half of the final lap, and it really strung out the field. Mike stays on the front for a bit longer, and we basically take it in like this. Mike in the front, Will second wheel, I'm behind Will. Earlier in the video I did say that it felt like Will was working for me the entire race, and that wasn't really his intention. His main objective for the race was to control the field, and I think he was doing it to prove a point, but he ended up doing a good amount of work this race because he covered a few attacks, and he was on the front for a good amount of the time. He told me that on this final lap, as we were coming up the final hill, when he took a look back, he saw that I was on his wheel. He decided that he would lead me out, peel off to the left, and pretty much ensure a win for me. So 500 meters left. We've been going pretty hard for the past 20 seconds and we still have a little bit to go. All the little bullets that I saved up during the race, I can unclip them here. Yeah, so all the training that I've done definitely helps when it comes to sprinting after an effort like this. But yeah, definitely saving energy during the race gave me my best chance in this opportunity. So I started my sprint here. I actually expected there to be at least a couple people on my wheel. After I sprinted for a few seconds, I peeked back to my left and I didn't see anybody, but obviously I just kept sprinting, and then I peeked back to my right after another couple seconds and I didn't see anybody there either. So I started coming off the power a little bit, but I also didn't want to leave anything to chance. So I peeked back, I think 2 more times, and I didn't see anyone behind me. I was actually kind of surprised that I had such a big gap. But yeah, that's how I won my first race. So I give a little celebratory. Woo! And after I showed a buddy of mine the video, he said I need to work on my celebration a little bit. But Yeah, I don't practice that. I wasn't expecting to win. But I will also say this, I will never take both my hands off the bars, even to celebrate. That's just me, I guess. But if it ever happens again, I will raise one hand in the air. All right. I have a couple more races coming up. A road race on June 10th, and then I have a crit on June 11th. So yeah, I'm going to keep training, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks.